Hey, what's up? Eric here. I'm excited about today's training call because I know you're going to get a ton of value out of it. We were fortunate enough to bring in ultra running physical therapist Dr. Meghan Slavin, where she's going to go over the importance of getting a proper diagnosis to an injury, and she's also going to cover such injuries that are very common to runners and ultra runners especially, such as like plantar fasciitis and shin splints and some other things. She's also going to touch points on the importance of subsidizing strength training and mobility for your running so you can go through the off season or recover stronger and get back on the trails and reach your goals faster and safer than as if you were going to push through it. So again, one of the reasons why I was excited to get Meghan to join us in our trail and ultra running mastermind is because not only is she a respected and renowned physical therapist in her own right, but she is also an ultra runner. So she knows the ins and outs, what we're going through, why we don't want to take a break and stuff like that. So sit back, relax, enjoy Dr. Meghan Slavin. So I'm excited to introduce Meghan. She is a doctor and a physical therapist out of Phoenix. The reason I'm excited to bring her on here because not only is she a physical therapist, but she is also an ultra runner. So she can relate to us with the stuff that we're going through our training, through our recovery, and everything like that. If you haven't checked out Meghan online, just search her up. She has run the Western States 100, has an awesome documentary on that, which is really neat, just tells her story behind it. And then also just want to thank her again because she and her husband just opened a new clinic, or their first clinic outside of North Phoenix, where they do in-person physical therapy and then also online appointments. So today she's going to be talking to us about strength and mobility and how to supplement or implement it into our training as ultra runners. So with that being said, Meghan, let us know a little bit more about you and how we can contact you and take it from there.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting and fun to just kind of like talk a little bit about my journey, but just like maybe things that have helped me not just as a runner, but also having like the knowledge of being a PT as well. I didn't get into trail running until I graduated grad school. I went to Midwestern University in Glendale, Arizona. I graduated in 2013, and I didn't go on my first trail run until after I graduated. So I felt like kind of having the knowledge of like what I learned in school and just the importance of maybe supplementing like a sport like running and how helpful that can be. I just feel very lucky that it's just kind of been ingrained in me ever since I started. Running is a like single plane of motion activity. So we're kind of, really using the front of our legs, the back of our legs, and we're going for extended periods of time. And so it can be really helpful and beneficial to kind of like step outside of that plane of motion and like strengthen, in all planes of motion, which will help just like build that strength and stability around our joints, which is going to help like support us for the long run. I did have a time like before I got into trail running where I was having a lot of back pain. I grew up as a competitive gymnast and I had a stress fracture in my back. I had just a lot of pain, like difficulty standing for like 10 minutes at a time. Numbness, tingling down my legs. I was told when I was 26 years old that I needed to have a back surgery and that I should probably stop running. So I think when you go to a doctor and you kind of hear like that sentence of like, hey, this sport or activity is maybe not for you, it can be really demoralizing. Like you just kind of feel like, oh, like, my dad was a marathon runner and I just kind of thought, like maybe I'll kind of dabble in this. He said it's fun running for a long period of time. Maybe I can try it, but I just kind of like learned early on. I was like, maybe this just like isn't for me. And I listened to that doctor and I didn't run for a year. But I joined a like boot camp where I got really into like strength training and stuff like that. And then I was just very lucky that someone asked me one day, they asked my husband and I to come to this trail running group, and that they were just going to start like a little run on Sundays where they would go to different trails. And I basically grew up in Arizona, but I had never seen Arizona in that way. So I started doing some trail running like once a week and just sitting down with these people that were doing crazy things like running, 50Ks and running in the Grand Canyon and just like doing all these like big and crazy things. And I just felt like, I am finally running 1 day a week, but I just don't know if I have like what it takes to be able to, do the stuff that they're doing. And I'm just very blessed, like with the trail running community and just like getting exposed to it. Like just seeing what people do, what you all do, like just, setting a goal and like traveling, just long distances and like seeing the world from your own 2 feet. It's just a really like cool and incredible thing. And it just like has really inspired me to like work a lot with runners and kind of specialize in working with endurance athletes and things like that. And I had a friend ask me to pace him at the end of a 50K, and it was like a night race in Arizona. And I just remember like helping him through his race and like crossing the finish line with him at like 3 in the morning. And I just thought, wow, like this is kind of like crazy, but actually like really cool. That people are just like out here cheering for other people and like just running in the middle of the desert like at night. And so I just like my friends just kind of slowly convinced me to like try a 25K, and then, hey, I think you should try this 50K. And once I did the 50K, I knew like that I was kind of in it for the long run, and that I really wanted to see like what my body could do. And now I've done 6 races at the 100-mile distance. I'd say I haven't like figured that distance out yet, but it's definitely my favorite. I love like the training aspect and just like I love running. Like I don't feel like I have to have a race on the calendar. I do work with a coach, and that's really helpful. I feel like it's just like a nice like release to be able to like get out and in nature. Like I don't have to listen to music. I don't have to like run with anybody else. I can just kind of like get out there and, do my thing. And so yeah, like I think that's kind of like my goal now in terms of running, is just I would really like to, figure out the 100-mile distance and like kind of put a good like race together. I feel like I've had races where I feel really good at the beginning, or races where I kind of come alive at the end, but I feel like it would be kind of cool to string it all together, or maybe try like a 200 someday or something like that. Um, but I think one thing that has really helped me is that I have like really tried to practice what I preach, and really like try to supplement my routine with mobility and strength and the things that I would give my patients. And I try really hard to like train specific to what I'm racing for. So if a race has a lot of climbing, like doing a lot of um exercises that are going to like train me for that. Or if there's a lot of downhill, same thing. And I think just over the last few years, after I left like traditional outpatient physical therapy, I work in a setting now where I just work one-on-one with a patient. So it's just 1 hour, like me and the patient, just kind of meeting them where they're at on any given day, and like really just diving into all the variables of their training. So like, when are you having pain? Like, or maybe they're not having pain and we're just kind of working on like performance-based stuff. But like just really diving into the like how can we train and make your body as resilient as it can be to like support you for, this race that you're going to experience. And so recently I developed a like online kind of mobility and strength program for runners that takes like all these common diagnoses that I see with runners, and kind of like puts all these exercises in that I would do from a rehab standpoint, but also exercises that I would do as a runner. So kind of like combining the two to like make rehab a little bit more fun, help make people a little bit more resilient and strong and mobile to support them for whatever they're training for. Um, the program is like meant for like the general population, but obviously with that being said, it might not be like the best for everybody, and there's like a lot to consider. And so at the end of the day, I do think like a customized and like individualized approach where I can like see how that patient moves, maybe see how that patient's running, um, look at how does this person produce force? How do they absorb force? What does strength look like? What kind of shoes do they wear? What kind of race are they training for? How much speed work do they do? How much do they climb? Like, what are the trails that they're running on? Like, there's like literally a million questions that I have for people when they are like experiencing pain or like, wanting to know like what's the best exercise that I can like add into my routine. Cause I think that at the end of the day, there's so many variables, there's so many things that could be happening. And yeah, I just like to meet people where they're at and like help them be able to figure out the best way to reach their goals, whatever those might be. So that's a little bit about me. My husband and I just recently took the big leap into the unknown and we opened our own facility in North Phoenix. We are seeing patients like in person, but I do also work with people remotely. So I work with people all over the world, and we'll do kind of like a video assessment, the same kind of movement screen that I would do with somebody if they were in the office. Obviously I can't like perform any manual treatments or like dry needling and things like that on patients, but through the computer, but I can see a lot and just kind of analyze like where the deficits are. So what does their like postural strength and awareness look like? What does their mobility look like in all joints? Like maybe this person is experiencing like foot and ankle symptoms, but what does their like hip stability look like? Because how we move at the hips is going to translate, down the chain. And then what our foundation and like our feet, that's going to translate up the chain. So looking at a person as a whole and not just as a diagnosis. So, I might get like a script that says plantar fasciitis, but I could line 10 people up that have like maybe similar symptoms, but all present in 10 different ways. And so what we want to do is be able to pick apart those deficits, like those pieces of the puzzle, and address all those pieces to like build this person up and help them, be a little bit stronger and withstand the forces that are being placed upon those areas when they run. Um, I know that you guys had maybe some more like specific questions about like foot and ankle strength and things like plantar fasciitis and shin splints and stuff like that. And I would say that I have days on my schedule where I am literally just treating like lower leg pain and like foot and ankle pain. And I think that is a very prevalent thing. And there's so many variables in the mix. Because if we look at something like plantar fasciitis, somebody that is living like a sedentary lifestyle that sits a lot, during their day, and someone that is like super active and, running 100 miles a week, like their symptoms could be like exactly the same. And so we have to kind of pick apart like, you know, all these different variables. Like, what does their footwear look like? Is that footwear offloading their foot and ankle, or is it loading the foot and ankle? What does their strengthening look like? So in the program that I developed, it's not just like squats and lunges and deadlifts and kind of those things that maybe if we look on the internet, like what strength training would benefit, me as a runner. It's the things to get outside that plane of motion and like really strengthen and stabilize. So when we look at like the foot and ankle, like lower leg strength is so important. So we want to be strong in our shins. We want to be strong in like our posterior tib or the inside of our leg. We want to be strong in our peroneal muscles or the outside of our leg. We really want to be strong in our calf and our soleus because those muscles can take on like 6 to 8 times our body weight when we run. And so we really want to strength train in a way that is going to simulate and translate to running. And so there's even things like if someone was performing a lunge, like putting a band around the foot and ankle to like challenge that stability so that, hey, this is going to stress the inside of your leg a little bit more. And now we're going to do it again, stressing the outside of your leg. Or I'll have people do exercises on like an unstable surface or like a slant board or a wedge, because when we trail run, like we're not like putting our foot and ankle on this like perfect, position for our whole race. Like we're hitting at some funky angles. And if we never work that, our body might, get a little cranky, like when we're, doing that for 100 miles. So I really like to try to think outside the box and try to simulate and build strength in those ways, because we can look on the internet and say like, hey, I know calf raises are like really beneficial for me. And they are. They're like one of the best exercises. But can we do them in a way where maybe our body's kind of moving more towards like a horizontal plane? Because when we run, we're not really like up and down, for a long period of time. We're kind of always constantly moving forward. So if we can stress the body and strengthen it in a way that is going to make us more resilient in those positions, then that's going to be like a really big and great thing. So that's what I see a lot with like foot and ankle pain, is that we need to look at how the foot and ankle is moving, what balance and stability looks like when we're standing on one leg, because when we run, there's a period of time where we have all of our weight on one leg. But we also want to look at things like, hey, how is the knee moving? Because that's the next joint above. And then how is the hip moving? Like, is the hip strong and stable in this single leg position? Because if it's not, that's going to translate forces, maybe not super efficiently down the chain, and vice versa. Like someone could be having, you know, uh, hip pain, but maybe we need to like strengthen the foot and ankle. And so I think like at the end of the day, like I never want my patients to just be like a diagnosis. I really want to look at like the whole picture. And so I like really strive to kind of look at all of those things. Like someone's coming in, with foot and ankle pain, I still want to see how does their back move? How does their hip move? What does their rotational mobility look like? Again, what's that stability? What is like, how are they landing when I ask them to jump and land on one leg? Because that kind of clues me into like, this is what's happening every single time they take a running step, right? Or they're having trouble producing force when they push off on this side. So we take those results at the end of an evaluation, and then the areas that maybe weren't like 100%, that's what we're going to put into the treatment. So we're going to look at what exercises can I give this person to really work on producing that force, absorbing that force, building stability, and all of these things to decrease pain and then increase performance and help them reach whatever their goal might be. So I don't have like a generic, like, hey, for everyone that has plantar fasciitis, I would do this, this, and this. There are definitely things that I see, which would be like, we want to work on big toe mobility and hip mobility and foot and ankle mobility and stability and just lower body strength and core strength and stuff like that. But like I said, we could line 10 people up and they could present all different ways. So we really want to look at specifically how is the patient moving in front of me? What are their goals? What are they training for? What does their typical schedule look like? Are they shrink training or cross training? Are they doing everything in one plane of motion? And just kind of figure out like maybe where are the missing pieces and how can we bridge the gap between where they are at today and what their goal might be. Like their race is 10 weeks out and they're experiencing this pain. Like how can we like attack this situation to build that strength, make them more resilient so that they can get to that start line healthy. And then once they get to the start line, get to the finish line healthy. So that's kind of my biggest goal, is to just meet people where they're at on any given day and just be on their side and not give them like these life sentences, like what a doctor said to me, where it's just like, hey, I think you should quit running. Like, I think this sport is very unique and it's crazy and we are like a rare and special breed. But I feel like if we can train our body in a way that like really supplements our sport and just makes us stronger and more mobile and more powerful and things like that, we're going to like decrease our risk of injury or help with the current injury that we're experiencing, and then make us like more resilient in the long run. So, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any like just generic home exercises that you would recommend somebody to, strengthen their lower leg?
Yeah, and I have like a few posts on my Instagram page that will kind of go over like, shin pain in runners or like posterior tib pain in runners and stuff like that. So, um yeah, so when I see a patient, I try really hard. How many of you guys have been to physical therapy? Okay. So a lot of you. And when you've gone to physical therapy, do you feel that like every single time you go, you are provided with like a new program, or do you feel like it's kind of the same exercises like every single time?
Pretty much the same.
Same.
Yeah, I'll speak on mine. A couple years ago, I had to go in for a shoulder rehab, and for the first, I think it was like a 6 week. He had me out in there in 6 or 8 weeks. But as I progressed, we would do the same, but then add, and then he would add different what's the word I'm looking for? Like it'd be the same exercise, but in a different movement, or he'd add a ball or add a weight or something
Like
like that.
progress that specific
Exactly.
exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
that's ultimately what we want to see. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
And I laughed at him too because he said, "My goal is to not have you back. I'm trying to work myself out of a job." And I was like,
yeah,
"Well, I can
yeah,
respect
yeah,
that."
yeah. Um, I do think that there is a lot of therapists that kind of maybe do the same thing with everybody. Like there's different companies, bigger companies that patients go see where they had like a chart and their exercises were written down, and it was like every single diagnosis that I saw, like they were all doing like the same exercises, right? And they might be exercises that these people could be doing at home, or maybe they just like weren't being progressed enough. The hard thing with like running is that like I was saying before, like there are, certain areas of our body that take on a lot of force and tension, and it could be 6 to 8 times our body weight. So if we're only ever doing like a single like body weight calf raise, that's not really it's going to do more than doing nothing, but it's not going to do as much as like really stimulating and like loading that structure in that way to like translate a little bit better to running is what I'm trying to say. So I try like really hard where when I do an evaluation, I have like this PT diagnosis that's going to list out all the impairments. So when someone has a foot or an ankle issue, a typical diagnosis might be that they have, decreased foot and ankle stability, decreased balance, decreased ankle range of motion, decreased hip range of motion, decreased hip stability and strength, and the list goes on and on and on. And so when we get into the gym and we get into like the active part of the session, I want to give them exercises that are going to hit on all those things. And so I don't want like a runner who's training for a 100-mile race to have this like list that, takes them, 3 hours to complete. So what is a mobility exercise where we can kind of hit like the hip, the foot, and the ankle? You know what I mean? Like what are moves that maybe are kind of going to be more efficient so that this person can spend more time running, but get the minimum effective dosage that they need to like help them through this specific injury. So with a question, like when you were saying like what would be a typical, list of exercises, I do have examples on my Instagram of like, different things that I might do with people. But I might say like, okay, we're going to do this exercise to work on big toe mobility because that's going to be really effective in like helping this patient who's experiencing plantar fasciitis. But then the next time they come in, I'm not going to give them the same mobility exercise. I'm going to give them something different. And so maybe they have like 2 or 3 workouts that they can kind of bounce between that are all kind of achieving the same thing. And the minimum effective dosage to like notice a significant change is going to be doing those things on 2 to 3 days of the week. So instead of someone coming in and me doing the exact same thing every single time they come in, I might give them, a day 1, a day 2, and a day 3, and they're going to bounce back and forth between those 3 days. And those things together are going to supplement and complement each other to make this person stronger and more resilient instead of just the same 5 exercises all the time.
Right. Perfect. So, we're ready to get into Q&A? All right, so now we are entering the best part of the training called the live Q&A, where the members of the Mind Nurse Life community get to ask our guests personal questions and they get live feedback. If you want to become a member of the Mind Nurse Life community, go to my website, mindnurselife.com, click on the button that says join the team, and you'll get access to these live Q&A sessions that end after every training call. These are reserved for our members only, so if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm sorry, you're going to have to join the team. So go to mindnurselife.com, click on the tab that says join the team, and we'll see you on the next training call.